There's a truth that crushes, and then there's a truth that clears the air in your lungs. See, not all truth feels like freedom at first. A lot of times it'll sting at the beginning. Some forms of truth will strip away the illusion that you were surviving in. And there's some forms of truth that will break the silence that you've built your identity around. But in the end, real truth never leaves you in chains. Real truth names those chains, and then it will walk you out of them. See, that's the kind of truth we're going to talk about in today's episode, because systems like the 764, they don't just lie, they distort, they wrap fragments of truth in fear and guilt and shame until the truth becomes indistinguishable from the trauma. And then when that happens, you don't run from the lies, you run from truth itself. See, 764 does not need to invent new narratives. It just needs to hijack the old ones that you've been operating off of. It takes your longing to be known and then tells you that truth must be loud and harsh and unfiltered. And then it takes your desire to feel whole and then says truth is always confrontation. And then it takes your instinct to speak up, and then it rewards you only when your truth aligns with that system's scripts. See, this is what weaponized truth looks like. It in essence masquerades as clarity, but it's really control. It punishes you for the nuance, and it shames you for expressing emotions. It silences in essence your questions. And then it convinces you that being honest means that you have to be harsh or unbending or superior. But the kind of truth that sets people free, well, that kind of truth doesn't sound like that at all. It sounds like a breath freely taken. It sounds like someone who's whispering what you perhaps didn't have the words for yet. It sounds like your body relaxing because no one's asking you to pretend anymore. So here's how you can know the difference between the two. See, if it makes you smaller, it's not truth. If it fractures your dignity, that's not truth. If it demands you to disappear to be right, that's not truth. See, real truth says things like, I see what you've been carrying, and you don't have to keep pretending that it's not heavy. Or real truth will say, you weren't crazy for sensing that. Or you were never too much. You were too real for a system that needed you to be silent. See, you are not what happened to you. And real truth will also say, you can stop auditioning. You belong just as you are. See, that's the kind of truth that liberates. And it doesn't need to be shouted to change your life. See, sometimes the most freeing truths can be spoken so gently that you're likely to almost miss them. But your soul won't. Because it's been waiting for someone to finally tell it. See, you don't have to keep breaking yourself to be believed. Consider this deeper wound that many of us carry. Like when we were told that the truth that was applied in all the wrong ways, like with volume but with no care, for example, with facts but no sense of humanity, with correction but no curiosity, with scripture perhaps but with no soul, with realism that felt like a cement wall instead of a doorway. And so we confused liberation with intensity, and we chased truths that sounded confident but wasn't really kind. And then we performed clarity, but we never actually felt safe. And what happens when you're never safe with truth, though? I think in that setting, you start lying to yourself, just so you can survive. And then you say that you're okay when really you're not. And then you pretend that the past didn't really leave its mark. And then you make yourself easy to be around, right? You, you call it resilience when it's actually just self-abandonment. See, that's what 764 relies on. It needs people who are afraid of truth or addicted to it in its most brutal forms. Because both options will keep you from peace. But here's what breaks the script though. See, when you choose truth that's aligned with integrity and intimacy, that will break that cycle. When you see a truth that doesn't necessarily need to perform, or truth that doesn't really weaponize, or truth that doesn't need you to agree, it just needs you to feel free, these will break that cycle. And I mean, these are just not theoretical. That's the kind of truth that says, you were never meant to carry this by yourself. Or this ends with you, right? Or you're not here to impress people who only love the performance that you offer. See, you don't need to explain the wound in essence, to know that it was real. You're actually allowed to live without defending your story. And that kind of truth, it doesn't flatten you. Instead, it would free you. And freedom doesn't always look like escape. See, sometimes it looks like standing still for the first time in your own body without sensing the need to apologize for how much space you're taking up. Sometimes truth looks like saying things like, I was wrong. Not to self-flagellate yourself, but to make room for personal growth. Other times, it looks like not explaining yourself when your truth is sacred and doesn't need to be defended. There are times when truth looks like making eye contact with your past and then realizing that survival was never meant to be permanent. See, freedom comes when truth returns and your voice can have its dignity again. So my question is, what's your truth today? Not the one you were trained to say, and not the one that keeps everyone else comfortable, not even the one that wins all the arguments, especially the ones online. But what's your truth? The one that lives in your chest, the one that shakes a little when it first surfaces, the one that you almost buried again because who would ever believe you, right? Well, say it anyway. See, you don't have to shout it, but you do need to own it. Because truth, when it's aligned with care, it becomes this compass. And once you start following that compass, then 764 loses its grip. It can't pull you back with shame anymore. It can't manipulate your silence. It can't even trade your certainty for self-erasing yourself. Because now you know what truth actually feels like. And that is everything, I think. Listen, if this episode served to give you some words to describe something you've been trying to name, or maybe it reminded you that kindness doesn't have to live in separate rooms with truth, then join me for tomorrow's episode, because in that one, we're going to step into one of the most important turns in this series. And that is, well, the title of this one here is going to be From Victim to Vision. Because once the truth sets you free, what comes next is purpose. And you're not just here to survive, you're here to build, right? And as we prepare to wrap this 764 series this month, I also want to say this to you as well. See, if everything we've talked about this month has maybe stirred questions about your worth, you're not alone. In fact, the next full series that we're heading into next month is entirely devoted to that very thing. So we're going to be talking about discovering and experiencing your personal worth, especially through the lens of integrity and intimacy. Because the truth may set you free, but knowing your worth will teach you how to stay free. So I hope you'll meet me back for tomorrow's episode. But until then, speak truth like it actually matters, because it does. And let that truth carry you, not just into your freedom, but into your future as well. I'll see you tomorrow, my dear friends. Bye for now.